Okay, really quickly, I do want to say, first of all, a huge, huge sense of gratitude that I'm speaking on behalf of my Israel to the Roth family for every week sponsoring this shir in honor of Mrs. Roth, Esther Roth's father, whose name is Meshulam Zalman Ben Wolf Hirsch, whose yahrzeit it is today. So I really wanted to thank her and hope she'll be able to make it today. This class also was begun in the memory of Lior Tova Bas Rachamim, who passed away on Beis Adar, and Chaisar Malka Bas Reuven Yehuda, who passed away on Zion Adar. And we began this class in their merit because they both attended the shul and came here to learn words of Chassidus and gain and go closer to the Eibishter, brought their kids with them, and that's why we started a share where people could bring their kids, learn, gather, support one another, and this should be an aliyah for the neshamas. So this week, we're up to chapters 35 and hopefully 36 as well. Kind of combine the two because that's what Yossi Paltiel does, and I base the share on whatever I learned from him. And I actually, once I learned both of them backwards and forwards, I actually kind of understood his insight of why it makes sense to put them two together and actually maybe even put 36 before 35. But let's do a slight review of Perek Lamed that we had spoken about last time we were together. So last time we were together came up this this very harsh question, which was harking back to the very first phrase that we were talking about on the title page, where it says that this is an easy thing for you. In order to serve the Eibishter, in order to serve God, it's an easy thing for you to do, i.e. to serve God with love and fear. This is something attainable. And remember that this is literally what the whole entire Tanya is supposed to be bringing us to, service of Hashem. Sefer Shel Beinanim is written for the Beinani, for the layman, for the in-betweener, who will, God willing, through this Sefer, learn what his specific Avodas Hashem is and how he also can attain this level of serving Hashem with Ava and Yira, and it could be something that's near to him. So that's the whole process, what we've been discussing up until now. And in Perek Lamed Dalet, again, the question kind of comes up. It's just been a development of trying to understand how this is attainable. How is it possible? Like, we're not all Moshe Rabbeinu, right? So we said, what if I'm not smart enough? What if I don't have the ability to sit down and contemplate on something for an extended period of time? What if I just, I don't have the zitzfleish, or I don't have the time, or I just have too many kids, right? We all have valid excuses for why we're not quite attaining this level of Avodah or feeling like serving Hashem with Avos Hashem and Yiras Hashem is something that is attainable, or feeling like that's something that's easy for us. And the Alter Rebbe gets very practical. And he says very heartening words. And he says, let's just remember this. He says, a little is a lot. You take one small step, that is a huge step. When you take that one step forward, that's, even for 5 minutes, what you're doing is you're tapping into something more than what you were before. Kind of, again, bringing up the concept that the Alter Rebbe brings throughout the Tanya, which is Yetzias Mitzrayim, which is something we're supposed to be talking about and remembering on an everyday basis. What's the theme of Yetzias Mitzrayim? It's actually interesting because we're coming upon that time after Purim. We're going to be preparing for Pesach. Some people start preparing for Pesach even before Purim. And the idea is that the concept of Yetzias Mitzrayim is breaking out of those boundaries. Mitzrayim comes from the word Meitzar, which means a boundary, a limitation. And every single time you open yourself up, you crack yourself open slightly out of that limitation, what you've done is you've broken this amount, this limitation, whatever this was, and you've broken up into something a little bit more. You have stretched. And that stretch, the Alter Rebbe says here, is huge. So don't think that it's a little, because a little is really a lot. And then he says, be practical, be a yid, do what you're supposed to do. Just practice mitzvahs. Go forward, do the mitzvahs. And what will happen is, if you have this deep desire, really deep desire to connect with Hashem, then Hashem will connect that desire to connect in the way that Moshe Rabbeinu connects with Hashem. Hashem will connect that for you. And the Alter Rebbe brings this concept of tzedakah, where if a person gives tzedakah and really truly gives it from his heart and wants to obviously give more, but he's giving with what's within his means and what's within um, the parameters of Torah, what's halacha. So Hashem makes it that whatever he keeps for himself, it's as if he also gave that to tzedakah. Right? And the Alter Rebbe is taking kind of like that halachic ruling and saying the same thing with your mitzvahs, the same thing with your intention. If you have this deep, deep desire to connect with Eibishter in a way that Moshe Rabbeinu can, or a loftier soul can, but you don't have that ability just because, for whatever reasons there are, because you live in this generation, because you're bombarded by the anxieties of the world we have today, Hashem will connect your deeds as if they were imbued with that Avos Hashem and Yiras Hashem. And we shared that story about the butcher, right, who just worked so hard. Every day he was working, waking up super early, going to sleep really late, and every single night he would say, I'm going to take out a sefer. I'm going to take it out and look inside. And he always said, he didn't say, I'm going to go learn, because he knew already that as soon as he looked inside, he would collapse on the sefer from exhaustion, and then later on make his way to bed, like in the wee hours of the morning. But his deep desire was always to learn Torah, and unfailingly would take out that sefer every single night just to take it out, because he knew he was going to fall asleep. But the idea is that after he passed away, his children said it doesn't matter, because that sefer sitting on his heart, or his face on that sefer absorbed it, which is the same exact idea that even though he couldn't actually get to that point of really learning all the Torah that he had wanted to, it was still absorbed, it was still counted as if he had. And that connection that he was yearning for with the Eibishter still happened because of that deep desire. So that's what we ended off with, Perek Lamed Daled. Okay? That practical is important, and also intention weighs in tremendously. Now, what's happening here in Perek Lamed Hey and Lamed Vav is we're actually shifting gears, right? So up until now, the last 34 prakim has been a lot about us, men, working on ourselves. What's wrong with us? Or what's happening inside of me? I have an nefesh elokis, I have an nefesh bahamis. Whoa, what is that? And trying to figure out how that manifests itself, how that plays out in our day-to-day lives, what we can do to help ourselves and serve Hashem better. It was all about us trying to reach God. So here in Perek Lamed Hey, Perek Lamed Vav, there's suddenly a shift, because now we're going to get a little bit more philosophical. Now we're going to describe something different than your own personal avodah. And it starts out basically, just to give you a little bit of background, there's been a lot of discussion amongst philosophers of why did Hashem create the world? And this is relevant to the discussion because you'll see what Chassidus has to say on it. So the discussion was always between philosophers and Kabbalists, right? So the philosophers would say, why did Hashem create the world? He did. It's not like it really makes a difference to him. He chose to do it, and he did it as an act of kindness. He did it for us as people to work on ourselves and for us to develop. As opposed to, right, the Kabbalists or the mystics, they actually take a different stance, and they say, no, there has to be some reason that Hashem created the world, and in some way it affects him. It's not that he just did it because to him it makes no difference whatsoever, and we are nothing to him, and therefore he just did it as an act of kindness for us. No, there's something there that Hashem wanted this world, and therefore he did it, and in some way it impacts him. Now, it's kind of like a dangerous thing to say, right? Because you're saying that God, who is infinite, who is perfect, in some way is affected by us imperfect and very finite individuals. It's a very theologically scary thing to say, because what does that even mean? The definition of God means that he's not impacted by creation. The definition of God is that he is perfect, that he is unchanging, right? This is something that we say in the Ani Mamins. So what does that actually mean? It means that Hashem created the world, right? According to what this philosophy is, Hashem created the world that he wants us to change our teva. So the word teva is tes vez ayin. It also could be the word mitvaya, like a coin or a mint. And what happens at the mint? The mint is the place where they have all these molds, and that's how they create more and more of the same thing. And the idea is that we're taking that mold and we're changing it. That Hashem just wanted us to take the molds that He created us in and change that mold. So again, what the philosophers are saying is you have to work on yourself, change your nature, change the parts of yourself that are ugly, the parts of yourself that are mean-spirited, the parts of yourself that are selfish. And that's the whole point of this world, so that you can experience a shift. You can experience something different. Other philosophers say the whole point was in order to make us angelic. Not literally to make us perfect, but to make us more elevated human beings. So we were created as like these mundane, very finite human beings. And the whole point of creation is in order to make us elevated, not just to change our teva, it's a little bit of a nuance difference, but to make us more godly, to make us more spiritual, to make us more ethereal, right? What does Kabbalah say? Kabbalah says that in order to still maintain its position that we do affect the Creator, Kabbalah says there's something called godliness. And Kabbalah goes very deep into this concept of parzuf, which is like almost like the blueprint of creation, which means to say, and this is how Kabbalah answers this very theological controversy, when we say that us in this world were placed here in order to affect God in a way, what does that mean? It means to affect godliness. It means to affect His light. It means that when we do a mitzvah, what we're doing is we're impacting the blueprint of creation. And that has impact. That does change things. It's not Him Himself, His essence, who He is, right? His perfectness. But we are impacting levels of godliness, parts of how He expresses Himself and the blueprint that He created for this world. Chassidus says something very different, right? So Chassidus takes a different standpoint. And Chassidus says, Hashem created the world because He desired to do so. He had a desire to create a world. And to try to understand His desire is like, it's like trying to understand God. And that's not something you could ever understand. If you're trying to understand someone's taiva, someone's desire for something, and there's no reasoning behind it, right? It's supra-rational. It's beyond rational. Now, I'm not talking about desire. Oftentimes with the English word desire, we link it to like going after something that is wrong, God forbid. We should really term it more like ratzon, like will. It was more like His will to create this world. They're both very, very linked because they're both super rational. One's below rationale and one's above rationale. But the point being is that when someone has a super rational desire, it's not something they could explain to you. It's not that it even makes sense. They can't justify it. It just is. It has to do with their isness. So from that place came this desire to create this world. And what's important to understand about that is that until now, according to Chassidus, our purpose was to improve ourselves. A lot of the focus of the Tanya for the last 34 prakim was, let me look at myself and see how can I bring myself to reach Eibishter? How can I refine myself to get up there? And what we're saying here is that Hashem desired for this world, what He wanted in this world was the lowest of low, right? The kind of world where it doesn't even recognize God. You can't get any lower. In Perek Lamed Vav, it talks about how you can't get any lower than this world. There's nothing lower than this world because it has the ability to say, I exist and nothing else does. There's a famous story about a scientist who was making a presentation about his discovery. And one of the people who were listening to his presentation said, in your model, where is the miracle of creation? Like, when did creation happen? And he said, in my model, God doesn't need to exist. Right? So it's a very famous line. My model, God doesn't need to exist. Like, He's not necessary. He's not necessary to this picture because I have proven a way otherwise. There's nothing lower than that, right? There's nothing lower than the ability to say that Hashem doesn't exist. All of this happened because it just happened or because I exist. So the nethermost level is what God desired. Why did he desire it? He desired to create a space where he did not exist and for us to bring him into existence, for us to make him happen here. That's what he wanted. He wanted it to be devoid of God, and for us, people who also live in this devoid of God world, and that's what we see, for us to have the ability to cogitate that there is a God, and then to bring him into this very physical Alma de Shekra. That's his desire. Can we understand it? No, we can't understand why he wants that. I mean, in a way, it could make sense, but not that we could really plumb the depths of why is that Hashem's desire for the entire world. And that's our entire focus, to make a dir b'tachtainim in this world. So what does that look like? How does that experience fit into what we've been talking about up until now? Up until now, we've been working on ourselves. This is what we're trying to do. We're trying to make ourselves more elevated human beings, kind of following in the footsteps of what the philosopher said. The point of this whole entire world is so that we could become more elevated human beings, kind of like become angelic, or so that we should turn over parts of ourselves so that we could turn around that teva, and instead become more elevated human beings. And here Chassidus is saying, now I'm going to throw you a curveball. Because what really Eibishter wants is, yes, for you to change yourselves and for you to refine yourselves. But that's not the focus. The focus is that Hashem wants to be brought down into this world, not you bring yourself up higher to Hashem. A person, a human, a yid, when he thinks about what he wants to do in his Avodas Hashem, if you ask his Nefesh Elokez, it would be to sit and learn Torah all day. And that's kind of what we've been talking about up until now. That Torah is everything, and if you can't do anything in your Avodah, just learn Torah. Just keep going at it. And here, the Alter Rebbe is saying, let's actually change the script a little bit so that we could really get attuned to what the real desire of the Eibishter is, which is not for you to sit and learn Torah a whole day. Hashem wants you to go out in the world, get a job, and do it honestly. Hashem wants you to go out into the world and walk on the street and still stay refined. Hashem wants you to go amongst people and chit-chat with people and still not say Lashon Hara. Hashem wants you to go out into the world and make sure that you're creating institutions, physical buildings that will house Torah study. That's the point. He wants you to engage. He wants to bring God down. He doesn't want you necessarily to elevate yourself. He wants to be brought here. And for a Yid, that's really hard. Now, of course, we're talking about a very refined Yid, because if you look at this as in a very linear way, we've been working. Like, this has been a journey of us working on ourselves. But now, finally, the Alter Rebbe is saying, now I've got you where I want you to be. And now I want to tell you that everything you've worked up until now on is great, but it's not the purpose of creation. All of your self-refinement, all of your davening for 4 hours a whole day, that's beautiful. And at the same time, there's a very deep part of you that you're not honoring, which is Hashem's desire. Your godly desire is to sit and learn Torah, or to daven a whole day, or to only engage in Torah and mitzvahs, or Avos Hashem, Yiras Hashem all day. And Hashem says, I want you to convert that to my desire, which is to make this world see me as an existence instead of seeing itself as existence. And that's the purpose. That's what I want. Now, the reason why this is so powerful is because the Alter Rebbe then goes into using this as an explanation to the question of the Beinoni, which is, if I'm never going to actually conquer my nefesh Bahamis, if I'm never going to actually turn that around, and if I'm always going to be struggling, and again, this question has been coming up all throughout all the chapters, right? Now that I know that I'm a struggler, how do I keep going at this? It's so exhausting. I'm not getting anywhere. It's just an everyday struggle. It's not even like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. It's just always stepping, right? It's just always just constantly running. So here the Alter Rebbe is saying that's exactly the point. Hashem wants struggle. Hashem wants messy. Hashem wants where the darkness is. That's exactly what he wants. He wants you to go where it's dark and illuminate it with God's light. And us, as the Beinoni, we know all about that. We know all about struggle. We know all about the darkness. It's so present for us, right? And when we choose to engage with light instead of the darkness, or take that darkness and transform it to light, then that's literally the whole point of creation. So the Alter Rebbe here is offering yet another explanation. It's been like layers and layers that the Alter Rebbe has been bringing to explain or to answer the Beinoni's exhaustive question of, when will this end? How hard do I have to work? Is this really getting anywhere? Is this really impacting me? It's like a garbage. Okay. Oh. Oh. It's a little dangerous. Okay. Trust. Okay. Climbing, right? So what here the Alter Rebbe is describing is like this paradox of religious life, of being a frum yid, where you're constantly experiencing, besides for experiencing the struggle and how hard it is to live as a religious yid all the time. But even if you were able to get attuned to really wanting God and to listen into that part of yourself and actually pursuing it, right? This is where the curveball is. The Alter Rebbe says, that is beautiful, and I love that for you, and you should continue doing that. And at the same time, that is not purpose. Purpose is that you're looking at the darkness and taking that darkness and transforming it to light. So, I mean, just in line with the Alter Rebbe's view right here, you could see all the miftzayim that the Rebbe began, right? The 10 different mitzvahs. All of those are exactly what the Alter Rebbe is talking about here, but that was actualizing it with the physical deed, where the Rebbe said, go out there, I want you to go put on tefillin on this irreligious person and let that person, the darkness, right, know that in this moment, they are being transformed into light. And there's a lot of opposition for this. We've spoken about this. Like, why are you teaching not from people about Torah if they're not going to even pursue it, right? So like the mitzvah of Talmud Torah. Why are you giving them the ability to buy a letter in the Torah? They have no part in the Torah. They're not even learning Torah. Why should they own a letter in the Torah? Why are you putting a pair of tefillin on someone who's about to go eat a ham sandwich or go into McDonald's? Why would you ever desecrate tefillin by allowing this person to do this mitzvah? You're literally bringing the holiest of holy, right, tefillin, and making it impure by attaching it to this impure body. And this was real opposition. A lot of stories about, like, let's say the Bachrim who are standing on street corners exposed to all these different things. And imagine how embarrassing it would be if someone would like to take a picture nowadays. Like, people take pictures, videos all the time, and in the background there's, I don't know, some unsneous picture, and they're putting on tefillin. People would think that that's an awful thing. Why are you taking Hashem and dragging it into the garbage? Why are you taking a mitzvah and dragging it into the negativity? And this is exactly what the Alter Rebbe is saying. The Alter Rebbe is saying that's where we have to transform. That's exactly what we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be on the streets. We're supposed to be finding all those places where God is not and allowing him to be. That's what we've been talking about throughout. Up until now, it's been about making space for Hashem inside of myself, hosting Hashem inside of me. That was the beautiful terminology we've been using for the last few prakim. I want to be a host for God within myself. And when I do that internal transformation, I am a host for Hashem inside myself. Now the Alter Rebbe is saying that's not enough. You need to do that inner transformation, yes, but you also need to go out into the world and make sure that you're working with physical things and taking those physical things and transforming them. And putting tefillin on a yid who has not put on tefillin yet that day is exactly what you're supposed to be doing, because in his day, there was a part of his day that is not God. And now you're bringing God. That's exactly the point of this world, to bring to those parts of your day or to the places in the world, every corner where God is not, and allow him to be revealed. Now, remember what we learned about last Perek, this is all within our perspective, right? Within God's perspective, the world doesn't even really exist. The world is within him. Of course, there's no place where he is not, according to Hashem's perspective, right? That makes no sense. But it's according to our perspective, the creation, the limitation of being in this world, that we can't see God. And so what Hashem wants is for everyone to be able to see him the way he sees the world, as complete godliness. And so when we do all these tiny little things where we engage with the darkness, obviously within the parameters of halacha, then what we're doing is we're bringing Hashem into the picture. And that's what he wanted. That's what Hashem wants constantly. There was a story I wanted to share with you. I'm forgetting. Yeah. Yeah, which is so also beautiful because um, it could happen, right, in Sahel, that, and we've definitely had this within periods of Israeli history, where there's a lot of, we did this on our own. Like, our army is incredibly strong and skilled, and look what we could do in the Middle East. Look what we did 6-day war, right? A lot of Chiloni Israelis will stand by Tzahal because of that, and bringing a from Yid or a godly perspective into Tzahal, into the army, is doing exactly the same thing, where they have minyanim, and they're adhering to halacha, they're putting on tefillin every day. What you're doing is you're bringing Hashem into an institution that was in ways ungodly, right? And that is exactly that. It's a beautiful example. Yeah. There's a phrase that says, Al kachacha ata chai v'al kachacha ata mes. It's against your will that you live, and it's against your will that you die. And both of those phrases, right next to each other, seems almost like it doesn't make sense. It's a contradiction. What does it mean? Is it against my will that I am living? So then that means that I really want to die. Or is it against my will that I am dying because I really want to live? Which one is it? And the idea is that that's what we're living all the time. We're always living that struggle between, I want to just throw myself into the world of Torah, into Hashem, and just connect with him entirely, but against my will, in ways, adopting Hashem's will, I go and I work a job, and I'm honest in that job. Against my will, I have to leave the kollel, and I have to go out into the world and help people and do mitzvayim. Against my will, I have to, I don't know, be a mother and change diapers and do all the things that sometimes feel mundane, when I'd rather be doing something that fills my spiritual well-being, right? And this is the entire concept. Another example would be Shabbos versus the days of the week. Without the other, you wouldn't have a complete week. During the week, we have to work, we have to engage, we have to be a part of this world. Hashem wants us to be a part of this world. On Shabbos, we stop. On Shabbos, we rest, right? We refrain from working. What is that concept? Refraining from working is just absolute connection with Eibishter. We know that we have that connection with Hashem. We have that ability to stop and connect with him. But what Hashem really wants is those 6 days of engagement, and then coming to that space of absolute recognition of God and how everyone could experience the ultimate Shabbos. And that's what we're working towards. Ultimate Shabbos is when the days of Mashiach, we're going to all witness Hashem, and it's going to be the knowledge of Hashem is going to spread across the lands where everyone will be able to see and witness Abishter. It won't just be Jews who are constantly searching for God. Everyone will be able to see him. Just like it says by Yetzias Mitzrayim that they were able to see Hashem. And during Har Sinai, when we received the Torah, we were able to see the thunder and hear the lightning. The idea was that they were physically witnessing it. They were physically experiencing what we will experience when Mashiach comes. The idea that Hashem came down, right? Hashem descended upon the mountain. The idea is that Hashem he revealed himself to this world. But that happened at Har Sinai. What we have to be doing is creating small Har Sinai moments in our everyday lives. So I want to get a little practical because it's a very beautiful idea, but what does that actually look like in our everyday life? A lot of people who criticize Yiddishkeit will say that we're so obsessed with details, right? We're so why would you, we're talking about God here. Why are you looking at the lemon and trying to see if there's a blemish? It looks like a perfect lemon, right? An esrog. Just looks perfect. Just take it, use it, do the mitzvah, what's the point of all these details? Why does it have to be exactly at this time? I was speaking to a woman yesterday. She's now a friend of mine. She's not Jewish. So she didn't know I was wearing a wig. So I was trying to explain to her the concept of wearing a sheitel. And to the person who has never even heard of a wig, what's a wig? A wig to them is like a costume, someone wears that when they're doing a play. She's just trying to understand the concept of a wig. And I'm hearing myself and how I'm explaining all these details and how it just feels so many details. And tznius is just so many details. Why is it? Why are we so detail oriented? Because details are physical. Details are small, seemingly insignificant. When we get lost in the details, then it's almost like you lose purpose, you lose the forest for the trees kind of concept. That's exactly what Hashem wants. Hashem wants us to, in every single tiny detail, reveal him. In every single tiny, minute, little thing that seems ungodly, to allow it to be godly. And that's the purpose. So I'll just take a concept that I actually teach sometimes in my workshops, which some of you have heard already. But there's a concept in psychology called sliding doors. And I don't know psychology so much, so if you know better, please tell me. But the idea is that anytime a husband and wife are interacting, there's a sliding door moment where, and the example that's given is, imagine a husband walks into the kitchen and his wife is there and she looks a little bit sad. The husband has the opportunity to walk to the fridge, which he had been intending to go to, and that's where he was heading to get himself a beer and walk out. So he could do that. Or he could notice that his wife looks a little bit sad and say hey, what's going on? Are you okay? Right? So the door slides open. He walked into the kitchen. There's an interaction there. What's going to happen? Is the door going to slide closed? No connection, or stay open because he initiated connection? And the same thing with the wife, right? Vice versa. And the concept is that between a husband and wife, there's always these sliding door moments, always opportunities at every moment to connect, even if they're not physically next to each other. There's always, thank God with technology, you always have moments to connect, either through your speech, your thought, whatever it is, intention. There's always moments where you could create connection. And I think it's a beautiful idea to bring over here. There's sliding door moments happening at every given second of our day, our awake day and our sleeping day. There's always moments to recognize Hashem. Every given moment has a darkness and a lightness. And we could either choose to just see the dark, where God is deficient, God is not in that picture, and we're basically taking the beer and walking out of the kitchen. Or we have the ability to see that maybe there's a little bit of light that Hashem wants us to reveal in this moment. Whatever it is, it could be literally, I'm just thinking of the most mundane thing. I'm opening up my sock drawer to take out my socks. Does it feel like there's darkness there? Not necessarily, but is God there in my sock drawer in the act of me opening up my sock drawer and choosing my socks? Yeah, maybe me choosing this pair of socks over this pair of socks will actually be a godly moment, will bring a recognition of God into this moment, that choice. And then I wear those socks for the rest of the day. That's me bringing God into this world. Every time I'm trying to think of things that are not even connected with mitzvahs, but like just absolute mundane, getting into your car and closing the door, seemingly devoid of anything. It's just an act of just stepping into your car and getting in and putting on your seatbelt. But that moment could also be a moment of God. What is your intention? Where are you heading? What are you doing? Is God present in your mind? Is he there? Is he your friends that you're constantly talking to and you're thinking about and you're obsessing over? We know what obsessive thoughts look like. We have them all the time. So every single moment is like this sliding door moment. I have a friend who it's so cute. She leaves post-it notes all over her house. She and her husband, they do that. It's like their thing. They leave post-it notes around. And some of the post-it notes are just like, don't forget the kids. Or post-it notes are saying that they love each other. Or I appreciate that you did this, or I appreciate that you did that. Why am I bringing that as an example? Everything that we are exposed to was designed by Hashgacha Pratis. Hashem wants us to be exposed to it. Hashem wanted me to be exposed to the computer, to the camera, to what you're all wearing today. There's purpose in it. If I'm missing that, I'm missing that moment, I'm missing the opportunity to see the light, to see the godliness that is there. And that's what Hashem wants. Hashem doesn't want me to stay here teaching my share, feeling pious. Hashem wants me to be outside of this year, walking down the street where it seemingly is devoid of God and be a representation of God, or be spreading godliness, allowing people to see, wow, a religious person is vibrant, right? Imagine you're passing someone along the street outside, it's a rainy day, people have their hoods down, they're walking, and you said, good afternoon. You know, with a smile, you're vibrant, you're happy, you're filled with joy. That's bringing light. That's bringing God down into this world. Your passion, your zeal, your happiness is bringing God into this experience and letting other people experience it too. So this is a shift that we're going to be entering into now, because up until now it's been a lot of our own personal avodah, and from here on in the Alter Rebbe is going to get a lot more philosophical, talking more about what Hashem wants, how we're going to bring Hashem down into this world, what Hashem's intention for the world was, and it's still going to be practical, and it's still something that we could think about all the time, but I just think it's important to just say there's going to be a shift, and there's going to be a lot more of a focus on what Hashem wants, his desires, and specifically in the darkness. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that in Perek Lamed Vav. We started Perek Lamed Vav, but we're going to talk a little bit more about that after. Okay. You're so welcome.